I'm Rick from Carthage Classic Cars. You can see we're back on the 70 Cuda and we're outside. We're going to be sandblasting today. Well, I wanted to do this about a week ago, but we've got some major storms here. If you can't see looking around, there's water everywhere. So today's the day. Zero chance of rain, not a cloud in the sky. It's going to be cooler out. Today's a great day to sandblast. So we're going to get to it. You can see this car is all stripped down. This is the way I like to sandblast them, so the water and the sand doesn't get stuck anywhere. At this point, there's nowhere it's going to get stuck. We'll show you how we wash it down, how we make sure we just verify this car is not going to rust. And then we're going to go to the second part of the video. We're going to epoxy prime, seal it. The car should look a lot different and a lot better, hopefully. I don't think we get too much worse on this car. Usually with the sandblaster, we worry about breaking through with holes and everything. But on this car, I think we'll be okay. I mean, how much more can we replace? So here's our blast nozzle we're going to be using. It's a 1/2 inch nozzle, pneumatic dead man switch. We'll take a look at the wet blaster right here. So you can see we got an equip blaster. It's on a pallet on the trailer. Obviously we got, it's I believe 500 gallon tank of water, or 150 gallon, sorry, 150 gallon tank of water. I believe it's a 100-pound pot here, or 50-pound pot. And what it does, this blaster's a little different than most wet blasters, where most of them will mix air and the water together in the bottom, and the air picks up the water picks up with the air as it's coming down with the material. This sandblaster, it uses hydraulics, so we'll take from that tank, pump through the hydraulics and pump into the tank down, mixing all the sand, and you can adjust it from there. So it's a lot more efficient on how it blasts, and it really does a better job. We have rust inhibitor in a tank. That is a key thing when wet blasting, because flash rusting on these cars will happen almost instantaneously. So that's a quick summary of the blasting. Let's get to the work, how we got the car down here, and then let's just start. I'll get changed and we'll start blasting. Also, we're running a 185 diesel compressor to feed this machine. So, all right, let's get to it.
Well, going back to the previous afternoon, I decided to load up the car the day before, so the intro of the video is the sun's coming up. We're going to start blasting and hopefully finish this job before the heat of the day. So you can see right now, I use these frame jigs. It makes life so much easier, from the cut down to working on them, getting the car up in the air, to even right now, taking it on this rollback and moving it to a different location to sandblast. You can see I got the caster legs up, the wheels, they go right up this bed, and there's no flex in the car. I think this is very important, that the car, we're not worried about the windows getting out of whack, the front windshield, the rear windshield, the door jambs. Nothing on this car is bending. You see the chassis jig will actually lift up a wheel first. So we are in a sandy location right now, so you're going to see, to get this car off the bed, I had to work the bed a little bit and actually get the truck out from under the car itself. No big deal though. Once we got it tied off, we just drop it in the sandy area. We're going to move the truck out, and then this is where it's going to sit overnight. Like I said, at this point, I'm not really worried about the car rusting. We're going to come back tomorrow and we're going to just start blasting it clean. Everything will be good. And we're going to also lift this car up to a higher level just to get the wheels off the ground and get it more comfortable for me to blast. Now that we got the car set out there, we're going to go ahead and prep the sandblaster and get it ready for use. Right now, Chase is helping me. We're putting Express Blast Inhibitor. It's a cleaner, degreaser, and a rust inhibitor. This is crucial when you're wet blasting to keep everything from flash rusting. This is, I believe it says it holds flash rust for 72 hours. So you'll actually see when we blast this car, it'll actually condition the metal. That's what this is. So it's very key that if you hire someone, that they're using this, or you're blasting yourself with the wet blaster, that you're using some kind of rust inhibitor. So that's in there. You have to also read the mixing directions. There's 2 mixing directions, one for well water, which we're using, and one for city water. Now that we added all the rust inhibitor in the tank, we're going to go ahead and let that fill up with the well water. We are now, while that's filling up, we're going to add our 100 pounds of recycled glass. So this is a medium grit. You could get all kind of blast materials. There's different kinds of stuff you can blast. I've liked the recycled glass. I like the medium grit. I think it blasts well. It doesn't do any damage and leaves a really good surface to get ready and put the epoxy on. And here we are, fast forward in time as we start blasting the Cuda. Everything's been loaded up, everything's hooked up, we're changed. I got my safety gear on. You see, on the wet blaster, you can get away with just wearing a face shield. I got hearing protection because of the amount of air that's flowing. And then I usually just like a set of coveralls that cover everything. And I think that one of the most important things are gloves. Also, a good pair of boots or something that, you don't want to be blasting in sandals and be able to hit your body. This sand, if it runs over you, this blaster's so strong, it will leave marks. So all the safety stuff aside, the blaster, what I try to do, I try to go in a certain order, because what's going to happen with this blaster is as I'm going through, you could see it cleans the metal, all the rust and paint and everything's coming off and it's easy to see. However, everywhere else that the sand is landing in this whole haze of water and everything else, it's getting that clump beach sand look. So it almost looks rusted in the background as you're blasting. That's one of the things with the wet blast that makes it a little bit harder. So if we stay in a complete pattern and we know where we blasted, where we need to go, it makes things so much easier on the blasting. The reason I chose a wet blasting application versus dry blasting is mostly for user preference. I didn't want a cloud of dust. I don't like that going all over the place. I don't like to have to deal with covering yourself up, worry about silica and everything else. And I really think the wet blasting on a car like this is a lot easier on the metal. I think it does a cleaner job. I think it's less harsh on the metal because you could tell when the water hits it, it doesn't pit it as much. And it just gives you a smoother, more efficient surface. I will say this about the sandblasting. I believe this is the best method in a car like this to get it all stripped down. I see people on these cars, they'll just hand strip a section, work on it, hand strip a section. I really think this is one of the few times, if you want to do it all yourself, that a professional really is going to save you so much time and effort for the cost of it. These machines, they do a quick job of it, they're efficient, and they just do a quality job. It really gets most all the sand off, and realistically, for you to do this with a little pot blaster and your in-garage compressor, you got to remember our compressor is a John Deere 185 CF screw compressor driven by a diesel engine. I mean, this thing puts out so much air, and this is even a big load for it. This blaster I have needs a minimum of 185 CFM up to 400 CFM. This is a beast of a machine, and it really does make this job a morning job, morning into lunch job. So, and this car really, it is a lot of pitted rust, so it did take a while versus some of the cars that, there's just a light dusting on it. If I was going to do this with a Harbor Freight blaster, it would take forever. I've learned that lesson, and we've upgraded, and now I'm telling you, save your time, effort, find a reliable blaster to just do this job and get your car prepped if you are in this level. So as far as the wet blasting, this is the number one key, I think, and the most crucial part, and why wet blasting gets such a bad rap. It's washing down all the sand. So right now, we're basically bypassing the pot, and we're just pumping out of that giant water tank with the rust inhibitor. And look at the car. You can actually see the car's metal is being conditioned and is turning a different color. Now that we got everything washed out off that rusted beach sand look, you can see it looks a lot better. We're now going to take the air compressor itself with a hose, and we're just air drying everything. You can see I'm really focusing in on the rockers of this car. We washed out the front and rear of the rockers, and then we're taking the air out of this thing. Even this car, after all this, we went through the washing, we went through the blowing it off and everything, you're still going to see some sand coming out of this thing. That's just a byproduct of sandblasting. So right now, we'll do a quick walk around as I'm adding the weld through primer. It's not perfect, but if you saw this car in some of the last videos, it looks a whole lot better. You could see this is the perfect surface too to put an epoxy primer on. It's got that really good mechanical adhesion. I mean, there are some more rust holes in everything else, but really this blaster did its job. And all in all, you could tell the difference even from that cross piece that we didn't blast, how rusted it was. Sometimes it's hard to forget the difference in the transformation on these cars. So right now, it's a good thing. It's time to rebuild this car. Once we get it sealed up in epoxy, like I said, we have 72 hours. When I blast, I try to make it a one-day process. So you could see what I ended up doing. I put the weld through primer on all the areas I know we're actually going to have to weld on this car. That's going to save us time having to come in with a belt sander and having to just grind off all the epoxy, which we know is very hard. And then I'm going to tape up those edges, saving time, and then we'll add our gray Omni epoxy. Honestly, the color is owner preference. And then what we're going to end up doing, we're going to put 2 coats of the Omni epoxy on here. We're going to put 1 solid coat, getting our grip and most of our bare metal covered. And then we'll wait 15 minutes and we'll come back with a 2nd coat. I think this could give us adequate amounts of protection. And then also, just in case, since there's a lot of random spots here, we missed one, we could come back with a 2nd coat and hit it off. There will be a couple runs because you see what I'm doing right now. I'm really focusing the primer inside the inner chassis and the holes. I'm spraying in there to just make sure we get adequate amount of coverage in there also. We don't want this car rusting from the inside out like it did last time and was destroyed. So take your time. This isn't like a show quality job. Again, there's going to be sand coming out. You're going to have some blemishes.
All right, so we're going to wrap up the sandblasting portion of the 70 Cuda. As you can see, the car, for the most part, looks a lot better. There's not a lot of rust on it. It does have more holes in it, but that's kind of the goal. It was to strip down this car to the bare metal, get it sealed up in epoxy, and get it ready to assemble. So you can see I also did the doors. We did them off camera just because it's the same process. I mean, we're just spraying sand at them, and then, like I said, we're washing it out with our blaster with our rust preventative in it to make sure it doesn't rust. A day like this is beautiful to be sandblasting because it really dries the car fast and makes sure that lingering water doesn't try to flash rust it. So I think that's the key on it. Now, we are a few days after, and I came out here and we just washed the rest of the sand off the chassis jig and the wheels and everything got clumped up. So we're just kind of fine tuning anything while out there. We're just doing a quick walk around. Looking at it, like I said, we got some damage around these areas. There's still some tape we can remove that, you know, we're just going to do our weld through primer. If I missed any area, no big deal. We'll come back through. We'll clean it down to bare metal and we'll come back through with the weld through primer. This just looks cleaner. I think with the gray, it's a little bit easier to see the damage. But what we're going to do on this car, the next step, now that it's completely stripped down, sandblasted, we're ready to start the rebuild process. So this is the lowest of the low right now. This is the worst the car hopefully will be at this point. So we'll take through the rockers first, because what we're gonna do in the next video, we're gonna start with the floor section. You see we got these big pieces and we're gonna try to get the whole floor from the rear to the front, maybe even the firewall area and everything in place, and get it ready for, then we'll seal it up in epoxy. I still gotta talk to the owner on how far he wants to take the new parts. If, you know, we're gonna strip them all down to bare metal and put in epoxy. You know, different owners want different things, but we'll talk to him about that. Before we end up doing that off camera, we'll come back through, we'll fix some of the rocker areas. We're still waiting on front torque boxes on this car, so I need to figure out if we're gonna jig off the old torque boxes, start doing the floor, or if the new torque boxes will be here pretty soon and we could start jigging off them. That's why I ended up sandblasting them, just in case, just so I can finish grinding them off if we're gonna use them and use them as reference points. You could see this area up here, I didn't sandblast. We didn't want to waste the owner's time or money, knowing that this is just a support piece holding the front end of this car from really swaying. So, and I didn't have to add any more bracing up there. So, like I said, we'll do a little bit of patching here or there, and then we'll put some new pieces on the car just to keep the process moving. We'll work up, we'll do a little bit of patching, we'll add some more pieces. So stay tuned for this stuff. We are gonna have to do some more work on this tail panel. You can see some edges are damaged, but we are gonna reuse the original tail panel on the car. Besides that, there's not too much of the original structure left on this car, but it's going to be an awesome 70 Cuda. I believe we saved one from the scrapyard, and I believe when it's done that this car is going to be better than Plymouth ever made it. So stay tuned for all that. If you like this kind of stuff, please like, comment, subscribe to our channel. I'm Rick from Carthage Classic Cars, and we'll see you on the next build video.